Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August episode of the Inspire series by Mantra for Change. I'm Deepika Rao, and it's a pleasure to be here with you all this evening. So, with everything happening around us this year, the pandemic, the lockdowns, floods, livelihoods being lost, cyclones, and so on and so forth, we need to constantly remind ourselves that no matter what, there's a path that we need to walk on. We need to harness all of our strengths, be optimistic about the future, and remind ourselves that inspiration isn't lost. For us, this was the reason to begin the Inspire series, to listen to those one-of-a-kind stories of individuals or groups and their extraordinary contributions to society. The road they take is riddled with challenges that they mold into opportunities. Never stopping is very characteristic of these change makers. Their words, their stories, taking in their experiences makes all of the difference. This evening, we're joined by an extremely inspiring individual, a true leader and a dynamic woman. She believes in the impact women have in the building of any nation, an individual who defines breaking the glass ceiling. It is an incredible honor for me to introduce to you our guest for this evening as we begin this August episode of Inspire. Ms. Kiran Pasricha is the Executive Director and CEO of Ananta Aspen Center and Ananta Center. The centers focus on leadership development and encourage frank and open dialogue on the most important issues facing Indian society to help foster its transformation. Ms. Kiran was the Deputy Director General of Confederation of Indian Industry before joining Ananta Aspen Center. Her association with CII exceeded 30 years, wherein she held a number of positions, including Head of Department of Membership Services and the President's Office. She took over the responsibility of the North America desk in 1993 and moved to Washington, D.C. in 1995 to establish the CII office in the US. She moved back to India in 2011 to head Ananta Aspen Center. She is a graduate from Kolkata University and also has the experience of working in the private sector in Kolkata. She is the first Indian recipient of the Peace Through Commerce Medal Award of the United States Department of Commerce. I welcome you, Ms. Pasricha, to this episode of Inspire. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. So I'd like to begin today's conversation, ma'am, with you by asking you to share a little bit more about yourself, your journey in the area of leadership, the years in the US, and moving back here to India.
So I don't even know where to start. You sort of asked me to lay out my whole life in front. So let me first start by saying thank you very much for that introduction. It's really an honor for me to be part of this program that you run for Mantra for Change. I typically don't do these conversations, but if it was not for Khushbu, I really wouldn't be here. So I have to thank Khushbu for inviting me and for having me here with all of you. So a little bit about my background in addition to what you have already conveyed. I was born, I'm a Punjabi by birth, born in a small town in Bihar called Samastipur, which I'm sure half of you have never even heard of. Grew up in Bengal, got married and came to Delhi. So I'm like a little bit of India all mixed up together. So it's very hard for me to say where I'm from, but that's really where I am, from India. I started my working career in Calcutta, then of course, I mean now Kolkata, then Calcutta. And I was there till I got married and then moved to Delhi. I started with CII, as you mentioned. The last 16 years of that time were as head of North America based out of Washington, D.C. I still remember the first time when I was told that I had to leave the country, go to Washington. And I went home and I told my husband, who was stunned to silence. My mother-in-law went into an absolute rage. Um, and her logic was very interesting. Her logic was that he is the elder son and he has to take care of his old parents. And what do you think you are doing taking him away to the United States? What's going to happen to us? So that's one reaction for you. Then, very confused, I called my father and I said, "Hey, Dad, please help me. I don't know what's going on here." And his reaction is, I mean, it was like chalk and cheese in terms of their reaction. And his reaction was, he says, "What are you worried about? We've lived our lives. You've got to live yours. Go avail of this opportunity. It'll be great to the United States," which were really the most fundamentally sort of big years for me, for the family, for the children, for everyone. Um, and then the stint in the United States, you are typically sent for 3 years for any posting. I mean, anywhere, I think it's a norm is about 3 years. You get transferred for a job and then you come back or you get moved on to somewhere else. And you will not believe this. This was 95. And the 3-year term was 98 when we tested nuclear. Oh boy, was that a fun time in the United States. Because if you recall, you won't even recall, you were kids then. But some of you may not even be born then, possibly. But you know what really was striking was in the way United States reaction sort of took the world in on its side, and India was left completely and totally to be in an office at that time was quite a challenge. In the United States, I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how very, very challenging that was. But what was great was that I went with a very clean slate in 95, very open to building whatever relationship we could. That's the reason why I had gone, build relations, build relations, build relations. And leading to building the brand India. Because that was a time when India didn't really exist. Who bothered with India? Who cared about India? Who talked about India? So you go and you have to build the India brand. To build the India brand, first you have to build your own organization's brand. To build that brand, it's like, who are you? So you have to build your brand. So it started with, that way, but you eventually reach a stage where you do build that brand. And I want to say that the reason that I want to take a step back to talk to you also about how all of this happened. And I was sitting at home. I was told, okay, the president of the United States is coming, come to the office. I wasn't well those days. And I went, and President Clinton was arriving in 95. And I don't know if you're aware, but when presidents and other heads of state visit, there's something called deliverables. So there's a whole long list of deliverables that each country sort of puts together to talk about, to say which each side wants from, it's the time to get everything done. So here was I, part of the deliverable list, if you please. You are going, we're opening an office in the United States, and there you go. Oh my gosh. So went, and that's of course when I told you about that story about my in-laws and how reactive they were. But here it is, the United States very happy that there's going to be an office of Indian industry in the United States. So I apply next day for visas for not next day actually, because all this happened within weeks. So they were so excited, they hosted a welcome to USA party. You always hear of farewell parties, but you never hear of welcome to someplace party. So that's what it was. I was very excited, very happy. Next day, applied for visa for the family. I had a long-term visa, not a problem. And when I filed for the visa, he literally looks at me because I had accompanied the family. The children were very young. And he turns around and he says, I'm so sorry, ma'am. I was at your party last night, but we can't grant you visa. I'm like, what? So you're like totally stunned. On one side, you're celebrating my going. And there's this big stamp of cancel, whatever refused or whatever visa on each of the passports. I, of course, took a very strong position. That was, I think, one of my first sort of strong positions I took, that if I leave this country, it'll be with the family or not. I tell you, stay strong and it pays off. Within a week, the visas were there. Within the following, literally in 2 weeks, we had our flights booked and we were, as a family, off to the United States, starting a new life for ourselves, for at least for a while. The 3 years, then let me go back to that. The 3 years obviously was very, very traumatic in 98. Had to push very hard for people to understand why we did what we did. And that led to, oh, don't touch her. Don't bring her back just now. Let her be there. So here I stayed on, and that 3 became 6, became 9, became 16. By the time it was like, okay, time to go home. That's a long stint with any organization to be having an office like that. But it was, the time there was wonderful. It was the best of both worlds because you had all advantage of being in the United States and none of the baggage that most people have of missing home, having to work for an American company, Indian value system. I had it all because I was working for an Indian firm, flying the India flag, wearing a sari to work every day, walking Capitol Hill, White House, everything was in a sari. It was amazing to be able to fly that flag. So I enjoyed my tenure there with both sort of stories, both lives very well, enjoying both of them. Lots of work done there, lots of challenges, getting think tanks to work and look at how, look at India firstly, because, India was, at that point, the word had just been coined, emerging market. And so we were like, okay, like a little guinea pig thing. Everybody was testing out how India would fare. And so it was very interesting. When I reached there, one think tank had a small program on India. And by the time I left, every think tank of any worth was running a major program on India. They had scholars on India, they had whatever. So, India went through a wonderful phase and I enjoyed every bit of that growth pattern. I was part of it and enjoyed it very, very much. That's the time when we also started our congressional program, bringing members of Congress to India. And that was just plain outstanding to see how interested members of Congress were, their impression of, I still remember that. Do you remember when Khalistan was a big issue? They wanted to create Khalistan. And I said, no, there is nothing called, and some few people who are sort of wanting it. India doesn't want separation and Punjab needs to stay with India. There's no question of a Khalistan. And it was like, no, but that. I said, okay. So there were some members of Congress. We literally put them on a flight, brought them to India, took them to the Golden Temple and said, see for yourself, talk to the people there, see where are these Khalistanis that you talk about. The problem was with just a handful of people in Washington who were lobbying real hard. But it's when you go through a situation like this, when you see it live for yourself, it makes such a difference. And then was our wonderful era of, the .com sort of the software. And then they had this impression that we had sweatshops and didn't treat our people well. And how could US companies give jobs to such people? Can you do outsourcing? And I tell you, when you take them, and some of our companies had better operations than even in the United States. it was like, it just shuts them up completely. They're not able to stand in Congress to say, no, it is like this. Because see, that's Congress for us is where policy gets made. And that's where we were really targeted in getting our stuff. So there were situations like that. Worked with the think tanks, and part of that is where we sort of got in touch with Aspen Institute. They had a very unique way of bringing people together, how they taught, their leadership styles they developed amongst diversity for them is very, very important. And where trust, the circle of trust is what is very important for that leading style. So trust is the key word, followed by, you trust, you share, you heal, and then you grow. That's the sort of methodology that's adopted. And so, well, once I got to see that, learn of that, I tell you, I was hooked. And so that's where my long transition into leadership. But that's how I came into this.
What an elaborate journey. I mean, it's a wonder how you can even keep track anymore. I mean, I think the most happening life of all.
It's been fun. It's been very enjoyable.
Yes. And I mean, going to the US itself was an experience for you on so many levels. And coming back from the US after all those years that you never even expected to, stay there or to live there, after 30 odd years or so, you came back to India.
Mm-hmm.
How was that? What was that all about? And what was it like starting to work with, Ananta Aspen and exploring this whole leadership area, women leadership area?
Right. So I'll tell you, Anant Aspen, India. Really, let me give you a little history, because otherwise, just sort of my transition from one job to the other was very, very sort of there was no border there. I just literally transitioned very comfortably. So while we were in the US is when we got exposed to Aspen Institute, as I mentioned earlier. While there, what we were very taken by was their ability to get people to sit around a table and to have a conversation. It includes people, the naysayers, the yesayers, everybody is brought together. Now, for us, that was like, wow, because in India, you don't talk like that. There's just no respect for diverse voices. At least so some of us felt that you're shouting at each other, you're talking past each other, but this wonderful ability to sit and have a great conversation. Wow. So we thought, and whether it is the political people, the business leaders, the NGOs, how do you bring everybody to the table? And that's when we said, look, we have to have an institution like this in India. We worked with Aspen Institute for 10 years before they agreed to have an Aspen India sort of take birth. So this is really started as a collaboration between Aspen USA and CII, my previous institution. So it came into being for many years, half a decade or so. I literally worked from the US on programs here. There was a very, very small team, but worked long distance, enjoyed what we were doing. So we enjoyed the track 2 dialogues we started with other countries where, you do it at such high level that it's just amazing to see what can be achieved through a track 2 process, what you can do to supplement what the governments are anyway doing. So that we started with. And then the second thing was this whole leadership program. In those good old days, we had no sort of FaceTimes or Zooms of the world. And I would literally talk to people for the selection process on the phone. It was funny. Now when I think back, what were we doing? But anyway, it was fun. And I would interview people middle of the night, whatever, because the time difference it was a killer. So you were literally working overtime to do the India bit and the US bit. But anyway, it was fun. So we launched a couple of classes while I was in the US. And then the work started growing, and I'd spent, when you do 15 years, it's like, need to go home. So the kids are grown up, they've got their jobs, settled somewhere else. So what am I doing all alone there? So I said, time to go back. And this work was really, really growing. And one could see the potential in it. So one said, okay, let's go back. Let's give this full-time attention. And so I came back to head Ananta. It was then called Aspen Institute India. Then people said, oh, you're like a branch office. We said, no. This is a partnership. We are not nobody branch office. So we had to switch names and we became Ananta Aspen Center. Long story, but it was fun to see the perception and then to rebuild. I mean, it was like reliving the US all over again. Because here again, I'm building a brand, which is to say I'm not the US organization. I'm Indian. I'm as Indian as you can get. So for India, by India type of thing. So that's really came back. But in the selection process of the couple of classes that I had done, realized very quickly, because there the criteria is gender balance in the classroom. Getting 50% women amongst corporate sector, government, NGOs, so difficult. It is so difficult, I can't even begin to tell you. Then we said, look, it's no point in just saying we can't find them. Let's start nurturing them young. So then came back, started working, takes a while, but then eventually I got Mr. Birla to sign off on it, Mr. C.K. Birla, who thought working with women and young women in smaller towns was, at least those who worked in smaller towns, because their challenges are different. So if we can do that, why not? And so that's when we sort of said, okay, let's start the fellowship for women leaders. And that's when I met with Khushbu, and that's why I'm here. I mean, amazing women. I mean, Khushbu is just outstanding. And like her, we brought in, and I'd love to actually have her come in at some point to say, what did this program mean for her? Because it's different for me because I see what's going on, but it's very different from people who experience it and see what the impact is on their own lives. And I'm hoping that it's been good because I still see them so connected on WhatsApp. I see the different classes sort of all buzz. I mean, sometimes I have a hard time keeping track of the speed at which messages go up and down. But that shows connectivity. The fellowship is for life. So it shows bonds that are built for a support system that otherwise you have hard time finding in the country. So that's really, that's how we sort of moved from there to the women leaders. Your question about the US and India, I have to say this, that women have problems in both countries. Most of the problems are very similar. There is a glass ceiling there is a glass ceiling here. The only difference I find is that in the US, they are very subtle about it. They are gracious. They listen to you, hear you, respect you. And if they can sort of understand where you're coming from and they trust you, and the respect goes up exponentially. So you have a much easier time working. What you have a hard time doing is getting to the top, which you can understand by my not saying what I'm saying, that in India, I find that sometimes is a challenge of how you get treated. That's a bit of an issue, but otherwise the issues are very similar.
Let's dig a little more deeper into that, Ms. Kiran. I mean, I know from even the conversations that I've heard from people from whom that I've heard as well about how the program helps them. But I want to understand your overall perspective on the women leadership landscape in India today? Are we hitting the target somewhere, or is there still a very, very long way to go? Have we at least reached a point where we're starting to have meaningful gender inclusive dialogues in today's working scenario?
Oh, that's a tough one, because it's just not a simple question. You know, we have come a long way. There is no question. From the time when I was the first one in my family to join the corporate sector. And my mother couldn't understand it. She says, "Ladkiyan to teacher banti hain." You know, I mean, it was like there were some fixed jobs meant for women. And what are you doing going into an office? And trust me, the Hindi films didn't help either, because that's the only image my mother had of what happens in corporate offices. And she was like, "What's going on here?" But my father, again, was very, very supportive, exceedingly supportive, said, "Go try it out. Let's see what happens." But, you know, from those days to today, where education is like equal opportunity, things are changing. You to where only boys went to higher education, girls didn't go to higher education, you know, things like that. Things have changed. I'm you know, I mean, at no time in when we were growing up did we have a situation where HR manuals had this thing about gender and, you know, things like this didn't feature. Today, every organization has this manual full of, you can't differentiate, you have to give equal opportunity, blah, blah, blah. All that is done. But I still feel that there are pockets of excellence. There are pockets where women are doing exceedingly well. There are pockets where women are being supported well. But overall, I want to question whether we really have a level playing field. And when I say that, you know, I just feel like, wow, I mean, how do I? Okay, let me give you one very clear example of why I see it happening differently. You read the number of articles in the papers these days, you know, the social side columns that come up, is how men are getting so surprised at how do women now manage so much, because everybody's working from home. So I think it's the first time men have actually been home on a working day and seen how women have to balance their work life, being a wife, being a mother, being a daughter-in-law, being in some of the house, you know, it's like you're going to do so much. And I think that appreciation somehow didn't happen till now as much as it has today. I think this has been a boon in that way, that people will understand and respect women, hopefully much more. I just feel that the attitudes need to change faster because the world is changing faster. So whether it is to do with, you know, safety, why do we have to worry about safety issues for women? If somebody's working late, you're worried, she's sitting in the office, what's going on? Or if somebody's going home late, you say, okay, as soon as you reach home, Deepika, give me a call to say you've reached safely. So why should we have that? I mean, it should be equally safe. If you have to work long hours, if you have to do whatever, there are now jobs which involve evening work or night work, whatever. But I just feel like we don't have that safety net that we need to have around us to make us feel secure that we want. And so this very often is a factor held against women, depending on the job, right? Second is marriage. I don't understand. I mean, I'd love to do a survey to see how often men move in a case where both have jobs, and when they get married, the men move to where the women are. I mean, it would be in single digits, trust me. It's always expected for the woman to leave her job and go there. Now, that's again a break in her, what is likely to have been a very amazing career. Then you're barely married for a year and starts the band going, when's the child coming? When are you going to have a baby? I mean, everything is fine. But the expectation then is that you will keep your job and the baby will come forth. Or you give up your job, now the baby is here. I mean, I just feel this again takes away. So when as an employer, I'm looking at candidates, even today, I have had conversations where people feel that maybe older women are better to have because these young women will suddenly get married or they'll have babies, 6 months of maternity leave will disappear. Now, these are mindset issues. I've had a boss all my life where women were, I think we had more women in our institution than men, honestly, at the senior level. There was no question. We were treated amazing. None of these issues came into existence. In my time, to think about it, let me talk about what was that year? 1982. Okay? And 1982 is like roughly, we're talking about 40 years ago. I went on maternity leave and I was sent to work at home. That's thinking which you don't see or hear of. But it was like, okay, no, let's not have her disappear on us. And then when she has the time, she'll put in a few hours, but let her stay connected. Now, that's what we need to see more and much more of. So all of these things, when I say, I'm just pointing out areas where I feel mindsets have to change. And hopefully this work from home will give people more respect. So more women will start working because work from home will become a norm rather than, doing somebody a favor, or it's just not allowed in most institutions, which is what the case was. So I would say that we have a long way to go. We have a very long way to go on this front. So that's roughly where my thinking goes. And I just hope that this COVID has brought with it some good stuff for women, better understanding, better appreciation, and better opportunities.
The many shades of COVID, I think, and this is something that we definitely should think about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I also wanted to understand, in all of these years of your professional journey, and also as serving as a leader for so many years, what was it like for you? What were some experiences that you had where you felt that there was a tremendous need for this to change? And what did you learn from this?
I started work before marriage. This was my one criteria, that I want to be independent. My mother, of course, thought I had a bee in my bonnet, bee in my head, she was, like, shadi karo, you know how it is. But I was like, no, I want to work, I want to be independent. And all of this was because one of my very close friends, frankly, whose husband passed away very suddenly, very unfortunate. And the way she got treated by her family was just not acceptable to me. And so sometimes some incidents impact your life. And this was one. I said, no, God, it doesn't matter. I have to live on my terms. It doesn't matter what happens or doesn't happen. I need to feel secure that, God forbid, something happens, I am able to take care of myself. It could be anything, right? And you need to be there. So that's what sort of triggered the need to go to work. And when you go to work, then I have to tell you, I've had two bosses in true terms between my two jobs, and this is my third job. It's not like I've switched too many, but I have to tell you, the first job, the first boss, I've just been way too fortunate, I think. One day he saw the light on when he was leaving, and you have a glass of tinted glass cabin, and he could see the light on. He came, he said, "What are you doing here?" So I said, "Oh, I have something to finish. You asked for this project report, and this is one of my first couple of years of my work." And he said, "No, you have to go home when you're supposed to go home. You're not supposed to stay late. So come on, I am going to drop you home." Now, what a gentleman. He goes, comes home, drops me home, rings the doorbell, apologizes to my mother, and that she didn't come home on time. And then he disappears. And then he tells me next day, gives me a long lecture. And he said, "Look, either you're overworked and you need help, or you're an idiot," which I know you're not. "So we'll get things done, but you will not stay late." So growing up, in your work life with bosses like this, who, I told you about the second one who had more women working for him than men. I just feel that women are better employees, more committed. They just need that equal opportunity. So I was very, very keen always to see that women should sort of, rise, shine. How do you make that happen? And again, an opportunity to be sent to the United States, first woman opening an office, and then people turning on and say, "Oh, you're from India. So where did you study?" I'm like, "What do you mean, where did you study?" "I'm from India. I studied in India." No, because they can't believe the image of the Indian woman, right? The image of the Indian male doesn't go together, that they would send a woman out to do what you have to do. So, you've been through all of this. You've been through challenges of nuclear tests when people tell you, go home. They accept you, and then suddenly you go nuclear. All the negativity that you can think of, you go. So what you learn is you got to be creative, and you got to learn how to survive. Survival instincts have to be extremely strong. I mean, I remember calling and saying that, everybody's screaming at us and saying, go home. And here I am, wondering what to do. And then it is like, okay, forget it. Let's do something creative. And guess what we did? We did a major fashion show in Washington, D.C. to, just to build bridges, just for icebreaker. And we served a fancy Indian meal within the biggest ballroom I could book. I had booked. There were 5 Miss Indias in that, array of people walking the ramp. It was just fun. So all I would say is challenges keep coming. If challenges don't come, you're not tested for your creativity, for your sort of ability to stand issues that come your way, and they will come. However good you are, however happy you are with what you do, things will come your way which are not what I expected. So it's important to just stay with, to do all of this with, some bit of creativity to keep the interest going. My second thing here would be trust. That, you have to keep. What has kept me going is the ability to make people trust you so that they know that you are there and you will deliver on the promise you have made. That is so, so crucial. So I would say that's really where some of these things that for me which helped me, which brought challenges, but then, you just have to go through that.
Absolutely. I also want to bring your focus a little bit to, the social sector where we work in. There seems to be a distinction when we look at this whole area of women leadership within the social sector itself. More women are donning the role of leaders. I mean, for example, in Mantra for Change itself, 80% of our leadership are women. So is this a reality, according to you? I mean, is this sector setting some kind of a precedence for others to follow in some way or the other?
Sorry, my line is getting a little wonky. You especially talk about the social sector, and I'll address that first. But I also want to talk about women generally in the workplace. In the social sector, I think that women today are doing amazing work, just outstanding. What I see in them is that passion which keeps them going, and that's really crucial and really to be respected and appreciated. I worry a little bit that the social sector, being about human beings, also brings with it challenges of a personal kind, where your heart sort of beats differently every time things don't go right for the people that you're working with, right? That's what social sector is. You're not dealing with machines and construction and all of that. And for that, I just feel women are standing up, standing strong. COVID has taught us so much. So many of these young women, my gosh, I've been on some of their, webinars and some of their conversations. They're doing such amazing work. I mean, you're put to shame sitting, and when you see how much in the field, on the ground they are. So it's important for them to stay strong, to stay, I would say,
Ma'am, we seem to have lost your audio.
sorry, I was trying to connect with something else just so that it didn't keep going off.
Oh,
Can
okay.
you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Sorry, I didn't even have time enough to tell you to please bear with me for a second before I was speaking.
No worries.
So when you see women in that, my only suggestion and thing to them would be push hard, because there's no one else who's going to push for you. These young women are leading amazing organizations, doing amazing work, but it is very lonely at the top, very lonely. So it's very important, therefore, to have to be surrounded, or at least have a support system in place. And that is why I just love the fellowship, the GP Birla Fellowship, because I just feel that there's a whole group of people that they can, for them, it's not competitive, it's not any of that. It's just about, we are there for each other. And that's the sort of stuff that you need, because there are so many people in the world who just do everything possible to pull you down, who are just negative energy. Just keep them away from you. Just put them away, is what I would say. And stay with, just the, just Am I going off again?
Yes, a little. We lost you for a bit there. Yeah.
Okay. I just raise your hand when you feel something is going wrong. I'm sorry. This is in spite of every possible effort of boosters, this, that, and the other in your home. My second thing to these lovely women is, don't hesitate to ask for help. But I would like to differentiate between being helpless and asking for help. Don't ever, ever show you're helpless, but go ahead and ask for help. My next point would be deal with okay, so a couple of things that really worked for me on the social sector side that I would like to say to them. You know, stay with that enjoyment that you get out of making a difference. It is the harder you work, the more you will appreciate the end result. Because when you see the result, it seems so well worth it all. So I would say just stay with that, and you know, and make I mean, the work that you do is amazing. So I would switch then to the corporate sector. And I just feel that the corporate sector people are just being so difficult, so very difficult. We still don't have women in leadership positions in most companies. The boards, in spite of, you know, I mean, it's like a face-saving thing that they try to get the women that they have to for being on the board. Okay, you've got them on the board, but are they on your leadership in, you know, on the management side? Do you have women in the leadership position? No. So I think from the corporate world, so I want to differentiate between the two, and I mean the challenges are different, and I'm hoping that more women who start off like this in the social sector will impact others, and we will see more women in the other facilities as well. So that's where.
And coming back to the earlier point that you had made about trust, I think that's something that needs to be imbibed sectors across, not just within the women leadership domain alone. Unbelievable. So after this very strong conversation that we've been having, we'd like to take a little bit of a light break and come to the very exciting rapid fire round of our episode.
Oh my Lord. So, now you're testing me. Now you're testing me. Okay.
So we have a few questions here, and very simple questions, and not too much of a brainer. And so we'd like you to answer them one after the other very quickly.
All right, I will try.
Okay, all right. So are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. One advice you would give your younger self?
It's okay if you don't know something. Don't fret.
Very important words. A habit that you swear by?
The art of positive thinking. You have no idea how I believe in that one. You have no clue when everything's going wrong. Here I am saying, no, think positive and that. That's a habit.
Wonderful. Leadership in a sentence?
I would say standing tall and strong.
What's your source of daily inspiration?
The happy smiles on my co-workers' faces. Love to get to them.
A value you hold sacred to yourself?
You know, this is very personal for me. So I don't even know how to phrase this. It's rapid fire. I can't answer in 2 seconds. So it's really, you know, it's about doing everything that my father would be proud of, or putting it the other way, never trying to do anything that you know he would be embarrassed about. Yes. That has been quite a steadfast thing in my life.
A quote that inspires you every day?
Dream big.
What's your go-to winding down activity?
That's nice. I have jigsaw puzzles.
Oh,
And the more pieces there are, the more fun I have.
absolutely.
And Sudoku, my complete relaxation bits.
Amazing, amazing. Both of which just take you away from the phones. If people
Totally.
still love doing Sudoku on the newspaper.
Yes, that's right.
An act of kindness towards you that you would never forget.
Sorry, say that again.
An act of kindness someone did for you that you would never forget.
Oh, can I talk of a really cute one? Very, very old, but it is something that just stayed with me. So I moved from a little town called Gorakhpur in UP to Calcutta. First day of college, father takes you to college, gets your admission done. You're in, and because this was midterm, because being a government servant's daughter, you're moving at some odd times of the year. And he said, "There's this number bus. Walk from here out to the main road." This is in Calcutta, and I'm in Loreto College. And he says, "Go walk to the main road, get into a bus, and go home." You have no idea. I just stood there and stood there and stood there for I don't know how many buses came and went. But the crowds in these Calcutta buses, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but people are hanging out the buses. Where the heck are you going to get into the bus? And that was difficult. And so, one bus conductor came. He got down and he said, something in Bengali, which I didn't even know. And he said, "Do you want to go into this number bus?" I said, "Yes." And guess what he did? He literally picked me up like a little baby, pushed me into the bus, and he said in Bengali, and you can sort of understand by just the expression, it was, "Don't worry, I will keep you there. You won't fall, but get into the bus." I mean, I can't imagine the poor guy. I mean, he took such pity on me and got me there, but I was home. But I think I really remember so very vividly. Otherwise,
Yes,
I would be standing there till next morning till my father came to pick me up.
I think in big cities, these are the acts that really, we hold close to ourselves. Otherwise, it's very difficult to see such things in really big cities. But yes. So, okay, moving on to the next question. An individual that you look up to.
Oh, my father for sure. Even today, after he's gone for so many years, my father for sure.
Amazing. And the last question of all, the latest book that you've read or are reading.
Oh, wait. I have just bought this book and I have not had the chance to open it. And I'm going to start today. Somebody recommended it very strongly. I have no idea what it is. Going to be like The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. So that's what I'm going to read next.
Wow. Could you show it a little closer to the camera, ma'am, so that all our audience could also see it? Yes.
Okay, and
wonderful.
That's what, and that's the author, Charlie.
Great. Book recommendations for our audience if you're all interested. And
it's a recommendation of somebody who hasn't read it. Sorry.
Well, we'd love to know your reviews of the book then.
Absolutely. We'll be happy to.
Absolutely. And with that, we come to an end of our rapid fire round. And ma'am, thank you so much. You performed amazingly on it. So
not rapid fire.
And I wanted to ask you one last question before we, close this conversation for today, which I'm very disappointed about doing. But I wanted to, know what message you would have for all of those women out there, who are climbing the ladder to success, climbing the ladder to leadership, building themselves, growing, learning, building that trust, and everything that you've said. But sometimes can even continue to get a little discouraged. What message do you have for those women out there?
Okay, I'm going to repeat one or two things that I've said already, but let me just count them if I can get them right. One, I would say, is push yourself really hard, because you are the only one who can do it. And hard work always pays. Say what you want, but there's no way that hard work is not going to show results. Two, as I said, excuse me, don't hesitate to ask for help. because you are alone in that spot and you can't be expected to know everything. So don't hesitate to ask. But as I said, don't sound helpless when you do the asking. 3, this is from my learning in Washington. Washington is a place which is full of lobbyists. You know what this breed of people are? They take money to do what should be done otherwise. Okay, so they lobby for change in government policy. But what that taught me was that don't take favors or don't ask for help from people whose credentials you would question. Because eventually, what happens? They come back to ask for their pound of flesh. So be careful when you're asking for help. Don't let anyone tell you that it's not possible. Everything is possible, and go do it. Another thing that my boss, I remember telling me, is you're in the solutions business, go find a solution. And if you have that bent of mind, trust me, there will be no problems, because then you're always looking for solutions. So you look at things very, very differently. And therefore, I would say when you're looking for solutions, that is the way you ask rather than say, I have a problem. So don't use those words, I have a problem. Get that phrase out of your dictionary, throw it out of the window. I do not have a problem. If there are situations, then we will solve them. I would say dream big. Dream really big, because sky's the limit and you don't know what your strengths are till you have tested them. We sometimes develop that fear, develop that feeling of I can't do it. And maybe I'm not equipped, maybe I'm not qualified. But trust me, everything is possible up to a certain extent. So go ahead and go catch your dreams, is what I would say. And my last thing would be, whatever you do, please be happy in what you do. Life is way too short. And if you don't like what you're doing, please. If you get up in the morning and you have to think of saying, oh my God, I have to go to work again, please, then very surely you're in the wrong place. Go find a place that excites you, that gets you motivated in the morning, and before you know it, you're out there happy, excited. It just has such an impact on your life. It has such an amazing push that you don't even realize. When you're happy, when you're positive, everybody else around you is, it just attracts more positiveness and more happiness. And so you have a bunch of very happy campers all around you, willing to help, willing to pitch in and doing everything. So I would say, please be happy in whatever you're doing in life.
Being happy in whatever we're doing in life. And I want to take this moment, ma'am, to, on behalf of as many women as I can represent here, I want to thank the generation that you come from, that you belong to, that has fought to make this day possible, that has fought to make this, a generation like ours to thrive in an ever competitive work environment. And I think when more of us aspire to be leaders, aspire to be women leaders, it just becomes a much better place to be in, to belong to. And I think that wouldn't have been possible at all without the efforts of women like you, who have set this platform for us. So thank you so much for doing that for all of us, ma'am.
Thank you, Deepika. Thank you for having me. I just do what I love to do, not because there's no mission in life, no nothing. So it's just, I love women, period. And so sure, I do what I do because of that. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. And thank you to the audience as well for joining us this evening. I hope that you all were left inspired from the words of Ms. Pasricha. And we will be again back next month with another episode of Inspire. And so if you want to catch all of the episodes of the Inspire series, please visit our YouTube page. It's all up there, and Miss Pasricha's will be up there as well. So please log into YouTube, watch our episodes, and join us next month as well as we continue to have these interactions that inspire. Thank you so much, Ms. Pasricha. Have a wonderful evening and a wonderful weekend ahead. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Deepika. Thank you for having me. Bye.